Greetings, everyone. I'm Sophis, and as usual, I'm here with Bootman to speculate on the next DLC, the Archon Prophecy. Now, this one should be about the last one we get in Season Pass 2, but we're hopeful for a Season Pass 3, and I think everything indicates that we might just get that. Do you want to introduce yourself, Bootman?
Yeah, hey there. My name's Bootman. I make some videos, very different from what Sophus here makes, but we get along pretty well, so always happy to speculate on the Age of Wonder stuff.
Yeah. Bootman's audio is a little iffy, and I'm sorry for that, but it's a bit of an adjustment. We want to do this as soon as possible, and he's very accommodating. So even though he doesn't have his setup right now, we're doing it like this. So please bear with us, and yeah. So the Archon Prophecy. This DLC has very little to go on, so I'm gonna start with the Steam page because it is more or less what they're promising us, and it's just this tiny little paragraph with a few bullet points.
There's been very little information from them aside from this page. They've been very quiet about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one thing they did confirm was on the Discord about the giant types, but that was because it intersected with giant kings, where we were expecting basically a light giant and a shadow giant. And they confirmed that they're not going to be ruler types, but we're getting the generic unit light giant and shadow giant, I guess.
Yes, and honestly, that is for what inferences we'll be able to make. That may be the single most important piece of information, but we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, sure. We'll go a little bit deeper than that. And actually, one thing that I am kind of curious reading this over, sure, it does say take command of the forces of light, and the name does say Archon Prophecy, but when they do mention a new culture, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting Archons, if you think about it. It doesn't say it's the Archon culture. So I think we.
So, so the interesting thing about that is in the lore, the Archons are a race. They're not they're not a culture specifically. They're a general race of sort of humans. They're like superhumans basically. And they have this sort of legendary mythology about them and whatnot. Even Age of Wonders 4, you see that a lot. You know, the Archons play a pretty big role in terms of the deep lore of the story mode. There's at least 2 or 3 different NPC rulers that reference the Archons as being like these big things above everything else. So it's not impossible that the culture is just completely unrelated from the Archon stuff. I don't know what route they're going to go because, like I said, the Archons were a race. So if they were going to do a culture, the Archon culture would have to be like people basically cosplaying Archons. That'd be what it is.
Yeah, I think it's possible that it is something not exactly out of left field, but different from what we were expecting. Because, and Bootman and I talked about this priorly in other discussions. Because if it is Archons, we do have 2 separate groups. Because in Age of Wonders 4, we deal with their remnant. I mean, Age of Wonders 3, sorry. We deal with their remnants, and it's a bunch of undead. And there is a giant there that's pretty much in Age of Wonders 3. It was one of the scariest marauders that you could run across because that giant was really nasty. And yeah, if the culture was kind of, oh, the light Archons, and then you have the remnants as options, we discussed that possibility, and it would kind of run into high culture territory. So that was our concern when discussing this new culture, that it might step on high culture's toes if it is tied to the Archons.
Well, my concern is just already that Oathsworn is just improved high culture in terms of the concept, not in terms of the actual like mechanics and function, but the broad concept for the faction was like for high, it would be like you play a certain way ethically as your style, and you get bonuses for that. That was kind of the idea of the high culture, and the Oathsword took that and did it way better and way more interesting. So we already have something stepping on the toes of the high culture. And if we get, say another double order culture from in terms like Archon inheritors, and maybe they have a subculture where you can play as remnants instead. Um, I think that's doubtful, but I think it's possible. I think more likely is that we'll get the inheritors of varying kinds, and then we'll get the remnants as a dwelling. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, that's more possible. Although there is also the fact that, at least as far as the latest culture releases and the reworks that they've done, they've really taken to heart the whole subculture thing. So, at least to me, it would be odd if it's just the inheritors. I'm on the side that if they do it, like you said, I do think we do get inheritors and remnants, if only to have two subcultures, because they see that people like the subcultures. I think we as players really reacted positively to every time the devs gave us new subcultures. So I
Yep.
don't think they'll stray away from that. I think the new design direction and rework still all focus on giving that kind of versatility.
I think we'll get subcultures as an absolute certainty. There will definitely be at least one subculture, probably two. There'll be a total of three subcultures in grand total for for the new culture, whatever the new culture is. The reason why I hesitate to say for sure that one of them will be remnants is because the remnants are explicitly undead. And so that puts you into a weird camp of like, okay, are we going to have this new camp start off as undead, or are we going to, and defy, the tome order and everything like that? Like, I don't think they're going to do that. So I'm not sure what the route would be there. And once again, we run into the issue where the remnants were the literal remnants of the Archon race. And if we're gonna have Archons be as a culture where any race can just dress up in Greek clothes and call themselves the Archon culture, if that's the route we're going now, then it wouldn't make sense for those to be remnants as well, because they wouldn't be remnants. The remnants are specifically of the race, from Age of Wonders, 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's fair. And
I'm just not sure what route they'll go.
yeah, it's kind of tricky, because really everything leads you to think that it will be Archons, especially take command of the forces of light. And that, to me, is also the argument of why they might go undead, if I can play a little bit of devil's advocate. Because by the same coin that we're saying that, okay, if remnants were playable, we're gonna start with them as undead, that would be weird. The same can be said about having the inheritors, because they would be innately divine, So I think that is kind of ingrained in the concept, if it is the culture.
Yeah, whatever happens, we're going to have to distinguish between the race of the Archons and the Archon culture. That's going to be pretty critical. And the question then becomes, are we going to get the literal race of the Archons? Or are they, this is also a possibility. It's far from impossible. They could just retcon it such that uh, Archons are always a culture. It was never a race of super basically humans. It's always been cultural. There's always been goblin Archons. There's always been yada, yada, yada. That could be the route they tackle. I think more likely is we're going to get some kind of inheritors, like people basically copying the Archons. Um, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious, and I am hoping that it doesn't step on any other culture's toes, that it brings something new to the fold. And I mean, I was doubtful at first with Giant Kings. When we speculated that, I was worried that there would be a lot of overlap with the other leaders. But then Giant King came out, and yeah, it is a heavy hitter like Eldritch Sovereign and the Dragon, but it also has its own thing. It's all about forging and terraforming. It has its niche, it has things I hadn't considered. So I have faith that it will have its place among the cultures. I'm just worried it might have similar traits.
We'll see. I mean, it just depends on what route they end up tackling with it. It's definitely going to be something order based, and we'll get into that when we get into your little your tome affinity chart there.
Yeah,
But beyond the culture, we're going to get one or more new forms. What I'm personally hoping for, and I'm not going to make my bets on everything. I'm hoping for minotaurs because the archons are very Greek themed, so I think it'd be cool to have minotaurs.
yeah, I mean, out of the beast-like appearances and all that, it is one of the missing things, having something more bovine, sort of. And I mean, we already have birds and wolves and cats. Yeah, I think it's very possible that the new form we get is that. Or we can even get the form of the Archons themselves, although I guess that would be another pseudo humanoid one that would kind of be like sirens and elves, and it runs a little too close, so maybe just a slight distinction, like maybe they're a little bit like Astartes are to regular humans in Warhammer. Maybe we get like bulkier, but at the same time, if it is that, it would kind of run into what we have already with the new way that we have the body types that we can just make bulky humans. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting an archon form because if you look at the old art, they are essentially just humans.
Yeah, so it's probably something more along those lines. I think you're closer to the truth than I am. It's probable that Greek stuff does make a lot of sense. I hadn't even considered. So yeah, maybe something.
We The archons are very Greek.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're gonna go. I think that with the monsters we get from this DLC, it's gonna be very Greek stuff. I'm hoping we get things like manticores and gorgons and stuff like that.
Oh, that would be very nice. Although, if we'll get to that in a moment when we talk tomes, because we will, of course, get wildlife, but I think we also get tome units usually, so we can speculate on that. However, before we get to tomes, I think one thing that we mentioned earlier that I think we can expand on now is the giants. You mentioned that it was a big thing, so you want to expand on that statement about the undead and the order giant?
Well, yeah. To me, that is just purest, perfect confirmation that we are 100% getting some variation of the actual archons and the remnants. We're getting both. We're not just getting the Archons as the Holy Light faction. We're not just getting the Remnants from Age of Wonders 3. We are getting both in some form or the other.
Yeah, that's possible for sure. I mean, it would be weird to just have the giant from Age of Wonders 3 and nothing else remnant related.
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident in that. But
Yeah, so let's then move, I think.
let's go. Well, let's go through the bullet points. Actually,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
we did we just did forms. So let's go. So story realm. I mean, whatever story realm. We don't really need to talk
Yeah.
about that. New narrative events. So before Giant King and certain other ones, I would have said I don't care about new narrative events. Uh, Playing it after Giant King with the intrigue events from Oathsworn or Ways of War, and all the other stuff that we have. I'm quite into the narrative events, and I think they work really well.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Legends of Meridia and everything that they've added certainly added another layer to how the realms work. I mean, maybe it's going to be extra stuff for existing systems. I don't think they'll tack on yet another thing on us. It's probably like, well, I mean, I think at most it's going to be something new in the category as Intrigues and Toll of Seasons and Legends of Merida or Meridia, I don't know for sure. But I'm hoping it's expanding existing events and possibilities also, because more often than not, when I put on Intrigue, I do get the leader being replaced. More often than not, it's just that.
The leader is always replaced. That's the intrigue events. That's
Oh, I thought there was another possibility.
no, they're always replaced, but it just depends on what they're being replaced by.
Yeah, that fair enough. I was under the impression that there would be more, and I just had the bad luck of running into the same thing time and again.
Yeah, I've never encountered anything other than a replacement, so I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But I will say it is going to be a new system, and that's from the paragraph text blurb above the points, where it talks about consult the oracles and glimpse the hidden prophecies that shape fates of the realms. And then towards the end, it says prophecy events.
Well, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, it could just be something baked into existing systems, like, for instance, how we get culture happenings and how we get merchant visits, because the merchant visits are kind of an extension of the random happening system at turn start. I'm thinking more along those lines, because if it is a separate system, I'm talking about it being a realm modifier. And if it
Ah,
isn't a realm modifier, I'm talking about it already being baked into the base, no matter what you pick. So I think it's possible that it's going to be a modifier, like the legends and the intrigue, but hopefully it also includes new things for the base, no matter what you play.
yeah, I think that for certain of the ones they've added, there's a chance for it to appear in a normal game, and setting the realm trait just guarantees it.
Yeah, possible.
So you may be right.
Yeah. Okay, so narrative events and new tomes. So now I think we can get to the tomes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Let me just switch it up here to have a nice different background, but in post editing, I'm going to put in the chart that Bootman and I are consulting, because I made this just for the sake of visuals, so that we can have a quicker reference to it. But basically, I did a rundown of every DLC tome we got from Dragon Dawn up till now. Hey everyone, post editing Sophis here. So, in the original recording, when I provided this chart, I had completely forgotten about Prosperity and Calamity as a tome. I thought I had combed all the DLC tomes carefully, but apparently I plain missed two tomes that I use a lot in the builds. So, excuse us, because we will be saying things a little bit incorrectly. For instance, Bootman will mention three tomes when in actuality, of course, we're talking about more than that. And I will forget to go over the Tome of Prosperity when I talk about how good Order tomes are. That said, later on, we do remember Prosperity, but not Calamity. And we briefly discuss the possibility of a Chaos and Shadow tome. So, yeah, it was a slight oversight on our part, but it still rings true that Order is the least served affinity, and hopefully Archon Prophecy corrects that. So, yes, please just disregard our brief confusion and also the correction because after we do remember prosperity, I say it is tied with chaos and shadow when in fact it isn't, since calamity does bring the total to 5 and 5, leaving only order as 4 tomes. So, yeah, thanks for understanding and let's get back to the video. There are some very underserved affinities. The most underserved affinity is, of course, order. So I think Archon Prophecy is coming at the best time to try and cover that because it's really, really the tome that suffers the most from that kind of thing. And I mean, it has 3 tomes for it in DLC, and 2 of them are with Materium. Materium is just so well served in tomes that if we get another season pass, I'll be fine if all the season pass stuff has nothing Materium related because yeah, I mean everyone else kind of needs stuff. I'm hoping we see new mixes because Order is really, really needing some variety because right now, dual tomes you can either spec into Chaos or Materium. So we're missing a lot of Order and other element combos.
I just say, well, as much as I do agree with you, I would like to see more Order tomes. The 3 Order DLC tomes we have are all like some of the best tomes in the entire game.
Oh, absolutely. Discipline is very powerful. Construct is very powerful. Cleansing Flames is very powerful. I know they're very meta defining insofar as a lot of builds kind of work off of them. If you're doing something ranged, Discipline is there. If you're doing something with a frontline, Construct is there. If you're playing around with, even with Ghostfire or Burning, Cleansing Flames is there. They really touch on common mechanics that a lot of builds uh, need and would be complemented by those tomes.
I'd expand on one of those. You said Discipline is good for range builds. I say if you're playing Age of Wonders 4, the Disciplined Home is there.
Yeah, I mean,
it,
yeah.
it goes with everything. So good.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just thinking of how powerful the true strike is, basically the true
Yeah, it
shot.
is.
But yeah, I mean they have everything. Even infantry having a chance to stun and increasing healing. Yeah, I mean it is a very front loaded tome, which I think is reflective of how monks are, at least in older tabletop RPGs. It's such a front loaded class and representative of that, we have a tome that does the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't on the graph, but just to uh, I have here on my notes the combos we're kind of lacking at the time that could be make for interesting tomes are Chaos and Shadow, Chaos and Astral, Shadow and Order, Shadow and Nature, and Order and Astral. Now, with Archon Prophecy, I don't think we'll run into any combos that don't involve order. At least I assume we won't, because right now it's kind of their time. So, out of the things we don't have yet, we could have Shadow and Order, which would make sense if, we might get 2 tomes. It's kind of the standard right now. And if we do get 2 tomes, it could
We should be
be.
getting 4.
Oh, we might get 4?
Yeah, every other DLC, typically speaking, it goes 2 and 4, 2 and 4.
Oh, then we might just get all those combos then, or even a pure order tome like Dungeon Depths is the first tome that isn't dual that comes in the DLC, so maybe. But Shadow and Order would be interesting, and I think thematically they could kind of work something that involves the Remnants, I think, because Shadow and Order kind of makes sense, quote unquote holy undead. And
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
yeah, and I mean, it could be interesting. It could be something that complements undead builds by giving an alternative. Maybe something a little different than just following pure shadow affinity. I don't know.
Yeah, Shadow sort of stealthily suffers from lack of variety because three of its tomes are all completely interdependent.
Yeah. So Shadow could use a little more mixing and matching for sure.
Yeah,
But
Shadow needs more variety than you might assume.
oh, absolutely. And Order Nature, I think, is an interesting one if we do get it. I think it kind of makes sense, you know. They're two of the most uh, powerful combos of pure affinity. I mean, sure, nature and
Isn't
materium,
prosperity order nature?
prosperity. Oh yeah, I did miss one on this chart. Sorry, everyone. As like,
All good.
yeah. So I might update the charts to reflect that. I definitely forgot. So actually, order is not as underserved as I thought, but it's still uh, at the same level as shadow and chaos. So all three of those could use some new stuff, to be sure.
Chaos wise, we're probably not going to get too much of that on this tome
Yeah, no,
because on DLC, because they have explicitly said that if they did another season three, they'd want to do a lot of chaos stuff.
yeah, and I think, for instance, one of the combos we don't have, Chaos and Shadow, they did mention werewolves and vampires. I think Chaos and Shadow is pure that, you know, creatures of the night.
Yes,
So we might not get as much Chaos served, but I think the affinities of the hours, so to speak, are Shadow and Order.
yes,
So yeah, I do think if we get, for instance, if we do get Gorgons, I want to say Shadow and Astral, but that would kind of, you know, we already have a lot of Shadow and Astral, so I'm hoping they go different. So maybe Shadow and Nature, you know, for the Greek monster stuff. That would be neat.
yeah. I mean, it's also possible that they don't even get a tome for themselves. They just are a wildlife element.
Yeah, I mean, could also be that. But I'm thinking of, you know, possibilities that we can get for ourselves. Because if we
Yeah,
if we do get 4 tomes, which would be plenty, it would make sense if 2 tomes kind of tackle the civilization, new culture aspect, kind of like how with the Reavers, with yeah Reavers, we got the Dreadnought and Construct. So
yeah,
even if they don't belong in the culture, they're kind of related to the culture. So we might get 2 tomes that relate more closely with the new culture, and then 2 new things that are just different.
yeah. I think that's very possible. Probably even likely. In terms of what it could be, I mean, it's called Archon Prophecy. I don't think that expecting some sort of divination tome is out of the question, like an Order Astral, maybe.
It's possible. Order Astral is. It does it already. No, we actually don't have Order Astral, so that would be a new combo. And then some sort of diviner unit, maybe, you know, a tier 4 or tier 3 mage could be something.
Something that worked with Marked even more.
Yeah, maybe. You know, Marked is kind of a mechanic that you don't see a lot, insofar as you get it in scrying and you get it with reavers. Could be nice.
Yeah, divination could be cool as more marked stuff. As an Order Astral, that'd be pretty cool. Order Shadow is like you said, that's also pretty likely. Okay, so what if we got pure tomes? What if we got like a pure Order and a pure Shadow, and it's like Tome of the Archons and Tome of the Remnants?
Yeah, that could also work. I mean, Dungeon Depths did open the door to have non-dual tomes, so there is a history now of it. So it could happen.
Yes.
And I mean, if Shadow gets a pure tome that doesn't shove itself into a corner as much as the others do, you know, undead or ice, and then you get a base Shadow tome that doesn't do either, that would be cool.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that as a possibility. I think the real wild card here is going to be what exactly the culture is. I think it probably will be. I think that the Greek aesthetic isn't served yet in Age of Wonders 4, and they'd be fools not to take advantage of that right now. We're probably going to get some variation of the Archon culture as a thing.
Yeah, it's probably the case. It's just that it would be odd if it was just the Archons and period, because, yeah, like everything we've discussed up until now. So, I mean, even if it's a warrior culture, I think that would clash with feudal and barbarian. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see how they'll surprise us because I'm sure there's ways. Maybe the whole thing is an exemplar culture, but you can also be fallen, but that would kind of step on oath sworn because you can be an oath breaker and you can be very loyal. I don't know.
I'm going to make an assumption. I'll make an assumption on an assumption. Okay. So
Okay.
my assumption earlier is that we can't have the Archon culture literally be the Archons unless they're going to change the lore.
Yeah.
And they've been pretty lore conscious. So the Archon culture will probably be essentially people cosplaying the Archons. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's step one. So then the stepping off point from there is maybe the idea is one uses the old knowledge and the old ways for goodness and enlightenment and order, and then a subculture that uses it for, evil nastiness.
Could be. And then you can have the third one kind of be a new age archons kind of thing, embracing new stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah. Could be that.
We could do it could be like an Athens, Sparta, and Thebes type thing if they want to go that far.
Yeah, I mean that would be neat. I think that opens up more possibilities for sure. I have no speculation on what culture units will be. I mean, if we're talking Greek, it makes sense if we had spears and shields, but other than that, I have no idea what they might go with.
Well, people have been wanting a culture with a high tier support for a while, and the only one that we really have that I remember off of my dome is Summoner for Mystic. If you're a Summoner Mystic, you have a tier 3 support unit.
I mean, the Awakener. You're forgetting the Awakener.
The Awaker's a battle mage.
Yeah, but it does support the racial skill, even if it is. Oh yeah, yeah, but as a pure support unit, the unit type, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be interested if they could find a way to squeeze in some sort of crazy tier 3 support cultural unit. I don't think they're going to. I think that if they were going to, they would have done that more by now. And I think that especially for a DLC culture where you want to sell people on cool units, it's really unlikely that they would have the biggest cool unit for the faction be a support unit. So I think it's probably unlikely.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe a monster like the war breed, although also a little unlikely. Maybe, I mean, it could be very out of left field if we had a racial giant.
I mean, yeah, that would fit with the Archons and
Yeah,
everything we know about them.
yeah. So basically, you have a form unit that's giant sized, and it's a single unit, and then you can have fun with an innately single unit that is racial, and then you can go insane with all the combos. That would be fun.
Now we're repeating ourselves from the first video.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. But I mean, if they do add
I do like the
it,
idea.
yeah. I mean, because then it kind of opens the gates to a lot of combos and possibilities. But yeah, I think we sort of covered as much as we could with the Archons. I mean, we have very little to go on. It's not even going to be a. I mean, I think it's going to be early summer or fall that we might get it because it's Q3, right? So that's summer in
Yep.
the northern hemisphere, and it kind of aligns with everyone kind of going on break and game releases. So yeah, Hopefully, we'll get news. I don't know, maybe next month they'll start trickling down some info or something because yeah, I'm looking forward to it and really hoping they give us an announcement saying, "Hey, we're going with season three. Please support us and get the pass so we can keep going this whole Age of Wonders thing." Because it's really been a very pleasant cycle of updates and content. I don't think the devs have really let us down. I think if something was a little undercooked, it wasn't a big deal, at least so far. So I hope they continue and keep up the good work.
Yeah, me too. I think that they have performed excellently, and I'm I'm expecting more great things. I'm just hope they got enough money to keep production going. We looked at the play rates during a previous thing we did together to see if the game was still holding strong on players. And it really is. And Ways of War was a huge spike in interest. So there's definitely even more audience out there to grab if they keep making good DLCs.
Let me just switch on over to the charts so we can have a look. Yeah, I mean, for a game that, it's a strategy game, turn based, and I mean, it's kind of old comparatively to other releases, but not super old. And it's still holding a pretty decent player base. I mean, 3,000 peak in the last 24 hours, weeks after Giant Kings. So we're not even getting new content boosting. I think that's an honest number, for the audience, for everything. I think it's doing good. I mean, if we look at 1 month, we're still talking okay, yeah, because 1 month it still had a little bit of Giant Kings going on, so it did get a little boost. But yeah, I think it's doing good far as everything's going, and I hope they keep the ball rolling, keep coming up with new content because really, nothing but good things to say to the devs and to hope that we get even more content and combos because clearly the game still has room to grow. Tome wise, customization wise, maybe new leaders, new cultures, reworks of old cultures, because I do think there's some cultures that could use a revisit for sure. Even high culture, maybe we do get that as a side update, although they are introducing a new culture, so introducing a rework might be unlikely because when the frontliner of the update was a new ruler type, we did get an update to feudal, but maybe it will muddy the waters if we do get another core rework and a new culture. I don't know.
I would love it if we did. That'd be if we got a high update then, and then maybe a dark update following that. Like that would be
Yeah, I
ideal for
think,
me.
of course, there's room for that, and even barbarian. I think barbarian, industrious, high, and dark are the ones that haven't been touched yet, and I think they can benefit from it. Even Reaver, even though it is a DLC one, and I know I'm biased because I quite like the culture, I think they could use a little bit of the subculture treatment because everything that came after them had that treatment. So it would be nice for them to consider giving them a pass. So maybe we have a less warmongering Reaver, have one that's more about building up and colonizing rather than just conquest and fire and steel. But yeah, we'll see what awaits us. I hope Age of Wonders 4 has a future beyond Archon Prophecy. So yeah, I think that's about what we can have as a discussion right now because we have so little info that we're mostly speculating and working off of the history of Paradox and everything they've put out, or rather, Triumph has put out with the updates. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to whatever may come, and I'm excited to see of everything we predicted here today, what might happen, what might not happen. Thank you, Bootman, for being here with me, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Have a good day.